Okay, wow, so what the? Here are all the 11 corals. Large chunk. Hey, what's up, reefers? We got new toys. I'm really excited about this AutoFeeder because this is made by Avast Marine Works, which is a local company that started out in Wamas, my local reef club. This AutoFeeder has been in the work for at least 10 plus years. It sounds ridiculous, but that was the story. All right, so first off, we got a little brush, I guess, for cleaning. Power adapter. This, I guess, is the mount, and it is 3D printed. All right, this is way more intricate than I thought it would be. But then again, I mean, it is $200. Looks like a little power head in this compartment. I can't really take it out easily, so I'm not gonna force it. Let's see what's going on in this. Is this interesting? Okay, wow, so this is 3D printed as well, man. Okay, look at this. It looks like it's like a clear acrylic panel up front with some design etched in. We got this acrylic tube right here. And then we got this little holder right here. And here's where the magic happens, where this tube actually gets submerged in the water. It has a tiny little power head in here to make sure all the pellets of flake food get saturated with water before being released into the tank. And that, my friend, is the special sauce of this Avast Plank AutoFeeder. Now, a lot of you guys are probably calling me crazy for spending $200 on a AutoFeeder, and yes, I did buy it. At the moment, I'm using one of those Eheim AutoFeeder. I think it's like 20, 25 bucks or something like that. And you can program it to feed up to, I believe, 4 times a day. The way I had it set up is that because the sliding door does not close small enough for pellets food, I kind of tape it up with electric tape. So the amount, it kind of dropped into the tank. It's closer to what I want. And I'm also using a heavier pellet, so even though it does not sink immediately, eventually it should sink before it goes into the overflow. Like I mentioned in the last video, I am thinking about adding some type of choking fish, whether it's the Anthias or the green chromis. I do appreciate multiple times of feeding per day. I do feel that the Eheim being able to program up to 4 feedings per day, it will probably work. But I'll feel a little better if I can do maybe like 6 or even up to 8 feedings per day in smaller amounts. And also because like with Anthias and stuff like that, I want to feed smaller pellets. I also want to make sure that the food does not get blown right into the overflow before it has a chance to get saturated and sink into the water column. Before you drop $200 on a pretty awesome AutoFeeder, which I mean, it looks pretty awesome, there's actually another trick that I picked up from Mr. Reef Dudes. If I want to make sure the flake and pellet food that I feed the tank actually sinks instead of like staying at the surface, try to set up the AutoFeeder, whether it's Eheim or whatever other cheaper ones, in the sump area in the return chamber. In my case, this chamber. And the key element he found is to have a power head that sits in this chamber to make sure all the water keeps getting circulated within this chamber, meaning that there is no dead spot, there's no place where the pellet is going to sit and rot. So as long as the pellets of flake food get suspended in the water column, eventually it's going to go right into the return pump, and because it is already saturated with water, when it comes out from the nozzle, it's just going to sink right away. Now in my case, my challenge is that all my biomedia is in the same chamber as the return pump. So if any pellets get suspended in this chamber, chances are it's going to get caught within the media and rot in there, and that's not something that I want. So one possible fix is maybe setting up a feeder like right above the return pump, and possibly even using a feeding ring so that the food does not sink until it's saturated with water. And as soon as saturated water is going to get sucked into the return pump and pop out from the display tank ready to feed. So at this point you may be thinking, okay, so you got that, why do you still want to buy this AutoFeeder? Me, I just feel like it's a cleaner install to just have this thing sitting on top. I can see how much food I have, and it could actually microdose without me having to use electric tape to close up the trap door, etc. And the second part is definitely more personal. I do like to support especially a local company that does like innovative products, and Avast has been one of those companies that has been pushing the envelope. And the fact that I've been seeing them in development for the last 10 years just got me really excited. And here Emily looks super excited for it as well. She just said she wanted to poop. So why are you coming down to tell me that?
You have to take Leon.
And where's Leon right now?
Upstairs. Go! Come!
1 nap later.
Alright guys, so I got 2 of the components installed, and that is the feeding tube as well as the mount, and they're calling this the plank. And here are 2 things that I'm not super crazy about. Number 1, there's a little pump in here, and that pump is actually on 24/7. So I'm curious whether it has to be on the entire time, or can I use a smart plug to turn this power head on maybe like 2 minutes before I feed. Because I feel like it's kind of like a waste of power to have this running 24/7 when I'm maybe feeding like 6 or 8 times a day. I'm gonna reach out to Avast and see if they can kind of let me know whether I can put this little power head on timer as well. It's one of those like tiny little guy, just like those power head you use for auto top off system. The second thing I'm not crazy about is that this whole unit actually uses 2 plugs. Honestly, that's actually quite a big deal for me. I know some of you guys have like an awesome setup where everything's like streamlined. I do not. It's a huge mess. It requires 2 plugs. Number one, a little power head within the feeding tube. And number two, the feeding drum actually requires another power outlet that is tied to a smart plug or a controller to control when the drum actually turns and feed. All right, so the other thing I'm maybe nitpicking a little bit is the length of the power cable. The cable was hung tight going this way to there, and I have to use a power strip and kind of like push it all the way back to there in order to reach. So this distance is probably, I'll say maybe like 7 to 8 foot. I wish they'll give me maybe like 2 more feet and then it's perfect. Again, this tank is 4 foot, so it's not even a super long tank. I do have a plug right behind the tank right there, but as you can see, I kind of like blocked it off because I don't really want any possible water splash going that way, so I'm trying to not use those plugs. So as you can see, I run the cable all the way over there in the back, and I have a power strip into my rat's nest of cable. I loaded the keg up with some of these TDO Chroma Boosts, small and medium, as a test. If this works well, I'm gonna use all kinds of different food in there as a mixture. Let's hook up to a smart plug and turn this on. You noticed inside the units, it's almost like a long screw, and it's slowly rotating. And look at the amount that is dosing. It's really small amount. Because the whole thing is tied to a smart plug or controller, so if that's not enough, you can just run it for longer. Versus if you dump too much at once, that's all you get. Yeah, like little bunny drops, like this.
So you have bunny drops
Bunny drops
recently?
certain days, little coffee beans coming out.
The next day.
Hey, what's up, reefers? This was a surprise. I may look a little tired because I just came back from fishing off a pier. I got skunked out. I have no idea what I'm doing out on a pier. So 2 days ago, I did a live stream with Top Shelf Aquatic on Instagram. In fact, about 2.5 years ago, I actually visited them. And during that time, Austin and Remy were kind enough to actually take time out to show me around the store and the farm, and actually drop a lot of really useful tips on how to keep a successful reef tank. If you're interested in that video, it's up here. So after the live stream yesterday with David and Ernesto messaged me and said that, hey, we want to send you a little something. I honestly have no idea what's in this box. We have a really beautiful acclimation quick guide on how to acclimate corals. They actually printed out my logo, and they printed out One Piece because they know that I like One Piece, the anime. This is actually the 1000 Sunny. That's a lot of coral. Are you, what the heck? Oh my goodness. I didn't even know they have Rasta Hammer. What the heck? Bill Murphy.
20 minutes later.
All right, we got a lot of corals to go through. Let's take a quick look. This is the TSA Death Spiral Monty. My guess is that this is going to be Montipora with a spiral growth formation, which is going to be awesome. TSA Bill Murray's Kenny Corn Cloves Sugar High Monty. Another really bright coral. This is the Yellow Sub Favia. I hope the sub means submarine because it kind of reminds me of the Beatles song, the Yellow Submarine. Big fan of that song. Rainbow Ricordia. Oh, this is pretty. We got a TSA Green Toadstool right here. Nice, bright, and green. This looks sweet. It's called TSA Rasta Hammer. Looks like one hammerhead with a baby on the side. Carolina Reaper, isn't that like a hot pepper or something like that? Finally, we made it. This is the last one. Midori Sunrise Montipora. This looks absolutely gorgeous. All right, my mind is blown. Thank you, TSA. Let's go ahead and get the corals into the tank.
The next morning.
Crazy story, I was talking to Top Shelf Aquatic, thanking them and asking for like specific care requirements and stuff like that for the corals. And Nesto was like, wait a minute, was there not a Carolina Reaper inside the frag pack as well, or did that not make it? And I looked, sure enough, dude. One of the bags actually floated behind the return pump. I just fished him out. Totally missed this guy, but the frag looks like in perfect shape as well. Let me go ahead and add this guy. Here are all the 11 corals that Top Shelf Aquatics sent me. It was a surprise coral, surprise pack. I really appreciate it. I was just chatting with Ernesto afterwards, and he asked which was my favorite coral out of the pack. Man, it was a tough question because like they are all beautiful in their own rights and they all have really interesting growth pattern. But if I have to pick a coral that intrigued me the most in this pack, surprisingly, it is actually an SPS, and the Bill Murray to be exact. For those of you who like SPS, that may not be a surprising answer, but for me, who kind of prefer LPS and soft corals, that was a surprise to me as well. I really like it because it has really intricate details in terms of like the color on the tip, the color on the body, and color on the base. Now I'm still working on the color profile on the camera, So I feel like the color you see in the video, probably not doing all these corals justice, especially the Blue Marie, because it has a lot of really nice intricate details and color gradients. But after you asked me that question, I kind of sat down and looked at all the corals. I was like, okay, all right, if I have to pick one that's kind of like intrigued me the most in this pack, I'll say it's the Blue Marie Acro right there. And because it is Acropora, that makes me nervous as well, seeing my track record of SPS. Although this time around, I do have the Alcatronic to help me out, keeping the alkalinity stable. So hopefully I have good luck. Honestly, at the moment, I'm still kind of like mind blown. So I need to just kind of like sit back, drink a little coffee, stop, think, and plan it out, and then we'll move forward to the next step. I'm sure most of you guys have heard of Shelf Aquatic, but if you are not familiar with them, they have a really nice store in Orlando, Florida that has just recently expanded, and they have a tremendous online presence, and they do live sell pretty often on reef to reef. So if you want to learn more, be sure to check them out on Instagram at Shelf Aquatic. I have been using the Avast plank AutoFeeder for the rest of this week.
1 week later.
Earlier in this video, I raised a couple issues I potentially would have with this AutoFeeder. Number one being wanting to dose smaller amounts so I can spread it out. So instead of just 2 feedings, I want to do maybe like 6 or even 8 times. The problem is that the quote-unquote controller that I'm using to engage the feeding drum, the smallest denomination is a minute, meaning that the least amount of time to engage a specific outlet is 1 minute. And the controller that I'm using is actually the TP-Link's Casa smart power strip that I use to power a lot of my home stuff. Now you may be wondering why I'm not using the GHL Mini that was hooked up to my system. And I'll be 100% honest with you, I was having issues just trying to find out how to just keep a switch channel on. And I was Googling, it was not a fun experience. And once I actually find out how to set a timer within the GHL Connect app, I see that the smallest denomination is also 1 minute. So at that point, I decided to just use the Casa Power Strip to do it if it's doing the same thing. At the moment, the GHL Mini is doing a lot of stuff that I already have redundancy for. For example, monitoring the tank temperature, I already have the Inkberg hooked up, so I've got that covered. Monitoring the pH, the Alcatronic is already doing that as well. So as a result, I just decided to unhook the GHL Mini and return that to my Reef Sensei because he landed it for me to try out. And in terms of actual user experience and setting things up, one of these Casa Smart Strip is a lot more user friendly. I feel like for my purpose, it seems to do the work just as well. Now down the road, as I start putting more equipment onto this system, for example, like calcium reactor and stuff like that, I may go back to the route of a controller. But at the moment, because of all the redundancy as well as I don't want to kind of clog up all the things down here, and to keep things more streamlined and easy to use, I figure just 2 of these smart plug is good enough for me for now. So again, mine might change down the road, but for now, trying to keep things simple. Now, with that said though, here's the new information I got from Avast Marine in that Instagram post. Things may have been a little different if I've seen that comment a little bit earlier. Basically, he said that in GHL, if I have set the plug to a doser, I actually get seconds control as well. Because I only use the process as a regular outlet, so I only see hours and minutes setting. But again, if I set it as a doser, I get seconds as well. Now, I wish that option was a lot more obvious. I'm not sure why they did not show the second option for regular outlets. I don't know, but for now, the tank is running without the GHL Mini. And there's another side of this story, and here's my Reef Sensei Telegram came in with the clutch. He has been using a new power interval timer that is seconds, which is exactly what we need here. So he's gonna hook me up. We're gonna put this up on the seconds. My plan is to maybe run the drum for like 30 seconds and then I can spread out the feeding throughout the day. I may start looking into freeze-dried food as well. So the other issue that I raised is whether the little power head inside the tube has to be run 24/7. I also heard back from Avast, it sounds like it does not need to be. I'll just turn it on maybe 1 minute before the drum start rotating and shut it off maybe like 5 minutes after it stopped rotating. So at this point, you may be asking me, do I like and do I recommend the Avast, the plank AutoFeeder? That's a pretty tough question to answer because that is a pricey piece of equipment. To me personally, I feel like it is a luxury purchase. Kind of like what I mentioned earlier in this video, there are other ways to achieve a similar results. Although it does rely on multiple pieces of equipment to work together to achieve that result, but you can achieve it at a fraction of the cost. And if I look even deeper, I feel like between the drum units and that little tube right there, between the 2 items, I feel like the tube is where all the magic happens. While the drum is nice and it obviously looks sexy, I do feel like the tube is where the magic is. I feel like between the 2, if they have the option to buy the whole set and then another option to just buy that tube, to be honest, I probably would just opt to buy that too. And that's not necessarily a bad thing, and that may not be a terrible business model as well. Because at $200 a pop, that's not something that everybody can afford. So to sum up my first week of experience with the Avast Plank AutoFeeder, I feel like it's an innovative product, it's a cool product, it's pricey, you can probably rig things together to do similar things, is not necessary. However, it is a cool product, it put them all in a really neat package, so you don't need different moving pieces, and it does what it claims to do. As to the price point, different people are comfortable paying different amount of things. For me, it is a little bit on the pricey end, I feel like, but I'll be interested in hearing what you think, and if you already have one, let me know what you think in the comments below. All right guys, the last bit of things I want to leave you guys is that, check this out, the Euphilia garden is coming along really nicely, but again, these are not Euphilias anymore. This is called the Biophermias. I mean, I can't pronounce it every single time. Check this out. So this is the latest addition, and I got this from a local WAMS member. Again and again, I say I got a lot of awesome local reefers here and selling things at a really good deals. So I just picked up these corals today, so it is slowly adjusting the tank, and I expect it to open a lot larger in coming 2 or 3 days. Another thing I really want to talk about is actually the cloudy tank. On the dot, every 2 weeks, I'll go for a cycle of cloudy water. So it's either something spawning or bacteria bloom that got locked into a cycle. So if you're interested in learning more about what I got planned for the Euphilia garden, the Zoa garden, and where I'll end up mounting all these corals, be sure to tune in next Sunday at 12:30 p.m. sharp, and I'll see you later.